So our first department is sales. And when you're designing a customer-centric sales team, there are a bunch of different things to consider, and we're going to knock them down one by one. So very front level, we already talked about Apogee as a company, how it, as a company, as a founding team, had taken the time to understand the market, understand who they were selling to. We're talking superintendents, we're talking school district communication leads, we're talking sometimes tech directors, the people who are directly responsible for the technical piece that also handle the communication piece of talking to parents, understood the critical need, and were high enough level at the customer that they were able to make purchasing decisions. Those are very key things. So when you're reaching out to customers, you want to make sure that you understand who you're selling to, where they are and how to reach them, and to make the best case for that audience, which is very important. Now, Apogee had a multi-tiered approach to this. So did paid advertising, did online advertising, did some word of mouth outreach, and the founder went to some school districts personally and met the executive teams there to get a sense for who they were and what they needed, and to talk to them about the product, both to inform the future development of the product as another layer of confirmation that the product itself was in a good space to actually solve these problems, that it was something these leaders actually needed, it was something they would actually pay for. That's an underrated point. If you are solving a problem, you want to do it with a tool that works and a tool that works in a way that your customers can look at and say right away, that will work, that will solve my problem. So that very simple, unconscious or automatic level of the pitch is very important to nail because sometimes that's all you get to make sure you're memorable and to make sure that these people come back or buy right. If they don't buy right away, make sure that they remember you and come back when they do decide like, okay, we do actually need this. So the way Apogee did this was they had a very robust, very strong SDR team. So there was the cold outreach, the folks that would call prospective customers who would make and then would try to set up a meeting with the proper, not proper, with the sales team. Sorry, sorry, SDRs out there. What you guys do is hard. SDRs are a hardworking bunch and a critically important bunch. So what they did is they were very creative. They called the district offices. They tried to reach out every place they could. They would check out LinkedIn. They would check out on the phone systems. They would reach out to school districts that way. But every time they vetted who they were talking to. They knew details about the school. They knew things about the customer base. They knew as much as they could about the contacts personally. And one of the things that they were particularly good at overcoming was in a lot of cases, if you call a school district and ask to speak to the superintendent, you will get multiple layers of gatekeepers. Front desk person, executive office person, maybe even like an assistant executive person, each layer away you have to get through to actually talk to the superintendent and make that final decision or make that final pitch. So they were very creative, very personable, and they were given the freedom where obviously there was a incentive to make a lot of calls because it's sales. You want to cast a broad net to actually make conversions and get people in. But they had these conversations in a very human level. And I want to pause and make sure to highlight that because this is really important for two reasons. Number one, the gatekeepers are people. I can't believe that has to be said. But the people who are telling you, no, you can't talk to the superintendent, please leave a message, are people. They are humans. And if you talk to them once, you're probably going to talk to them again when you call back. So building relationships with even the gatekeepers is hugely important. And it was something that Aptitude did really well and made a priority. It wasn't like, oh no, a gatekeeper, I have to run around them or trick them. It was, how are you, Janet? I hope your dog is doing well. Let's just chat for a second and then maybe we'll get a call to the superintendent or we can call back and try another time. This automatically already sets up that human relationship with the very first person at the school who has the relationship with the superintendent. And the thing is, these gatekeepers are some of the people who talk to your actual purchasing decision makers the most often. And you don't know how strong that relationship is. You don't know how much pull they have. And at minimum, they're people again. So when you're having a conversation with people in any level of a sales conversation, be nice. Take the time to make it an actual conversation and a human one. You don't want to alienate the first person you talk to because that you'll never get through. You don't want to treat them as if they're not worth your time. You want to treat people as people at every single possible layer. That's huge. And then the other thing was a very creative approach. Just a couple examples. While I was there, Aptitude did experiment with a cookie printer where you could buy a blank cookie and then have an early stage like photo printer print a picture of, for example, a school's logo on the cookie and send that in a paper mailer to the superintendent. That was the kind of stuff that no gatekeeper ever is going to hold. They'll say, we're going to give this to you because this is cool. It was creative, it was clever, it showed an innovative approach from the company. It showed that the company was willing to take the time to reach out to them on an individual level, which is something that is further than ever from the mind of most companies, and customers feel that. So we're being pitched that AI can really personalize things for people, and sure, it could. There probably is an AI tool that can automatically batch print 1,000 cookies with school district logos on them. But it's really important to check that because the last thing you want is to send that level of a personalized gift to a school district and have it be wrong. An outdated logo, an incorrect logo, the logo of their direct competitor. That would be a shots fired territory. So there's all this. And then the most creative approach I saw was there are these mailers you can put together that actually have like a mini trimmed down tablet that is a video player. So you could record a video introduction and pitch, put it in an envelope, mail it to the superintendent. These all are ways to build that personal touch. So like, hey, we are different. We do stand out. We are making the time to reach out to you because we want to talk to you because of who you are. And you can already hear in the way I presented that what a powerful sales approach that is. Absolutely huge. And then often this turned into appointments and booking with the sales team. The sales team had a working environment where they could actually lead a demo. They had example live customers that could actually demonstrate the software and how it worked. They had the tools in hand and knew how to use them to go ahead and actually demonstrate this sort of thing live. And they were well trained on the product. Both the SDRs at the front line and then also the sales folks were well trained on the product. They understood the internal team. There was actual time and effort putting in to make sure that the sales department was an integral part of the company. That is impossible to understate how powerful that is. One of the more common complaints you see thrown around in CS is a bad fit customer. Somebody sold something the company doesn't actually have. Somebody promised something the product doesn't do. Somebody promised a product that isn't even real. The better your sales team understands the product and how to use it, the better they can pitch it, the better they can demonstrate it, and the more clearly and honestly they can start that very early relationship with the customer. That's huge. So, product knowledge is a key part of making a customer centric sales team and sales approach. And all of this probably sounds like extra work and it sounds like extra money, but I will tell you that translates to long term customer health and it translates to a higher conversion rate from actual meetings held. And even more than that, all of these things are memorable and stand out. If, for example, you have a sales meeting, you do a demo with someone, they don't buy, and then within a week they kind of reconsider or they're talking to other people around who are looking for the same thing, you want to make sure in a week, a month, 6 months, when another superintendent asks them like, "Hey, have you heard about any solution for this problem we have?" that your company that offers that solution is the name that they say out loud. That level of referral, that level of a company speaking up for you and advertising for you when you're not in the room is one of the most difficult to measure, but most important and most valuable aspects of building a customer centric sales function that goes into this stuff and actually translates to a ton of sales. That's huge. And as a live example, there was one superintendent that I worked with directly, kind of late in my time at Apogee, and he had been a sales lead for 3 years, which sounds like an absolute waste of time, right? So if you're looking at this, you're looking at like shaving off costs somewhere, you'd say like, why would you talk to someone for 3 years? That's ridiculous. But the thing is, this was a, 20,000 AR contract. It was small when he did sign on and started working with him. But he had brought in as an advocate for the company, as somebody who'd seen the demos and really loved the product and believed in it. Well, he couldn't be a customer at the time. He didn't have the budget, didn't have the decision making. He brought in, I believe it was $3 million in ARR over those 3 years. So he brought in significantly more money than he personally was worth as a contract because of that relationship based approach, because the team was patient, because the team took the time to be accessible to him, because they took the time to talk to him. He became a public advocate for the product. He had a hand in developing it, he had a hand in building it, and he made the company a ton of money that was absolutely worth talking to him and being patient with him. And that's just one example of the compounding power of that human relationship sales approach. Delight to work with. He was so excited when he was finally able to have the budget to finally come on as a customer. And that again, that long-term level of enthusiasm for the product and company doesn't just happen. That's the kind of thing that happens when you have this very human, very positive relationship with prospective customers, even before they actually pay a dime. and then after as well is the very nurturing piece. Now, this has gotten a little bit long, but I wanted to really highlight this because if you're talking about customer success and this customer centric aspect, it's very rare for the conversation to start with sales. So I wanted to start there because that's a hugely important piece of it. And another aspect of this all worked really well together because one of Aptogy's keys to growth was sending out these really powerful bid proposals. So when people put out calls for requests for proposal, an RFP for really big contracts, Aptogy had multiple people on different teams who'd already worked closely together who understood and spoke a shared language of the company, the customer, and product, who put together really strong RFP proposals or RFP videos. I was a part of that. I was very proud to be a part of those. And that was a really extraordinary piece of being on that level of collaborative terms with the sales team was really, really big because they could provide additional customer context. I could provide additional customer context for their future conversations. And it was really powerful to be able to support each other. Having that tight knit cross collaboration was a big part of this whole relationship working. So if my sales lead, my VP of sales was on a call with a customer, they could send me a Slack message right then live and be like, hey, do you have an example of this use case? Do you have a second to hop on this call? Can you speak to this on some level in long-term relationship? And I could jump in there. And the sales team had no hesitation asking for this kind of thing. We in CS had no hesitation jumping into that sales side of the conversation because we were used to it. We worked closely together. Right now, it's very trendy and very common to hear customer success talked about as a revenue function, talking about it owning renewals, getting bonuses based on renewals and retention, which is fine. But you also have this tremendous resource on the sales side that's rarely discussed and is hugely important. And we're not even talking about upsells. We're talking about first time sales and how powerful it is to have a customer success manager who knows what they're talking about, has an active portfolio, hopping into a sales call and being able to answer thorny questions before someone is even signed. Hugely valuable piece. And then that actually leads very cleanly into the next piece where we'll go ahead and jump off of sales. So I hope I fully articulated the value of a customer-centric sales approach. But the handoff also is really critical here because on the first introductory call, after a customer is signed, they meet the implementation specialist, the onboarder, who's going to help them and their team learn how to use the tools and get set up. And they also meet the customer success manager, who's going to step in and be the long-term relationship lead after that. That whole double handoff where you see three people on the team who you know by name, you know their faces, and you've spoken to them at the very earliest part of the sales process is a huge piece of building that trust, building that kind of long-term face-to-face relationship portion of this tool. And this, of course, is all virtual. This is remote because you can't physically be at every single sales conversation in person. So being able to build that level of trust and investment that early virtually, again, huge standout competitive advantage in any market. There we go. So that handoff piece. And then, of course, so then when sales says, hey, we're going to go ahead and do the handoff to implementation, then you're going to move on to the long-term relationship with your CSM. The customer was ready for that, prepared, and like, I remember that person. They were cool. Let's do it. Instead of like, oh no, I have to leave my one trusted relationship to talk to a new stranger. So easing customers through the different stages so it wasn't a jarring handoff and letting an initially positive, warm relationship pre-warm the future relationships is a really powerful tool to making sure everything goes smoothly. That helps again avoid those bad fit customers. It helps prime like good, productive conversations. It makes sure that people are starting the process with a positive perspective. And it's an opportunity for the sales team to go ahead and say live to the CSM and onboarder, these are their goals. This is what we talked about doing while the customer is there. So you have that context where the customer is aware that everyone is considering their needs and their goals from the start. Absolutely huge. Incredibly underrated approach. So I wanted to make sure to sit down and talk through this real quick because that's important. We will go ahead and jump to the next one after this.